Welcome back, third grade. We're going to do a project today that involves some overlapping and some lateral symmetry. Lateral symmetry is creating shapes like this that are the same on both sides. We do this by folding and cutting paper. And then that folded line in the middle is called the line of symmetry. You may have heard about this in math class. And watch the video, and it's a two-part video. So part one you can do today and come back next week to watch part two, because it's going to take a while to do this and I don't want you to feel like you have to do it all in 1 week. Have fun with the video and stop it, pause it whenever you need to so that you can catch up. This is all to be done at your pace. Today's drawing goal is that I can create symmetry and overlapping in my composition. The kind of symmetry I'm talking about in this lesson is lateral symmetry, and lateral symmetry means the same on the right as it is on the left. You will begin this lesson by creating vases that are symmetrical, yet all different in size and shape, and we will do this by folding a piece of paper and drawing half of the vase on one side of the fold. And then when we cut that line and open up our folded paper, we should have a symmetrical container. It doesn't have to be a vase. It could be a bottle, or maybe a fancy glass, or a perfume container, or even a beaker from a chemistry set. This picture shows you how we might arrange the vases or bottles on a table so it looks like there is overlapping, which creates depth on the paper. Notice how the bottles that are lowest on the page are the closest to the viewer. They are seen completely, but the bottles that are higher on the page are farther from the viewer and they are not seen completely. They are partially blocked or overlapped by the vases that are closer to us. This overlapping is a trick that artists used to create space or depth or distance on a flat piece of paper. We're going to do this today with our vases. So follow along and see if you can fold and cut some containers that are symmetrical, like this. Find an old piece of paper that you're allowed to cut up. Fold it in half. I always keep my fold on the left-hand side because it's important to know where the fold is. That's going to become the line of symmetry. And now I'm drawing half of a vase. You'll need a pair of scissors here to cut on the line. Keep the paper folded while you're cutting and stay as close to your line as possible. Now we're ready to open it up and see the lateral symmetry. There's a vase. I'm going to set that one aside and try another. So I've got to find my fold. Okay, there it is. Keep my eye on it. It's over here on the left-hand side. I'd like to start at the top of my paper. I'm making a bottle this time. You don't need to make these too big because you're going to be tracing a few of them on a piece of paper for your scene. Now let's open this one up. Actually, it kind of looks like a thin vase instead of a bottle, but that's okay. I'll keep it. Find the fold, put it to the left, start at the top. Don't forget to have a flat bottom. You can't let your bottom come to a point because no vase can balance on a point. There needs to be a flat horizontal line at the bottom and a flat horizontal line at the top. This is a very fancy looking vase with lots of bumps. You can be creative. Let's fold some more of that paper. Remember to turn it so your fold is on the left-hand side. Now I've got to draw something here. I think I'll make a bowl this time. So half of a bowl would look like this. Let's open that up. Perfect. It's a big bowl, like a big fruit bowl that might be on the table behind these vases, or maybe the vase is behind the bowl. So I can plan my arrangement before I start. For this last one, I think I want to make a salt or pepper shaker. There's the little dots that will be on the top. That might be it. When you open up the paper, sometimes you're not going to be happy with how it turns out. Like this time, I feel like it's too wide. So I'm going to go back and trim it down. Okay, I like that one. If you need some help with your vase shapes, you might want to pause on this page. The red line is the fold. So fold a piece of paper and put the fold to the left where my red line is. The green line is what you will draw with pencil. And then you can cut on the green line while the paper's folded and see what turns out. When you're ready to place your pre-cut shapes onto a piece of paper to draw, do not place them like this, where they're all spread out and there's no overlapping, or they're all in a straight line at the bottom. That's not at all what you're supposed to do. Instead, try arranging them like this, where some are behind and some are in front. I'm going to start with my very closest vase. It's nearest the bottom of the paper, and I get to trace the entire thing. It's not so easy tracing a thin piece of paper. You've got to hold it down with your hands and don't let it move until you're done tracing the entire outline. I'm going to trace another vase, this time a little bit higher on the page. Make sure that they're not getting crooked or slanted. They need to stay straight up and down. Okay, now we're ready for some overlapping. This vase is going to be higher than this one, so it's going to be behind. So what I have to do is trace the vase, but pick up my pencil whenever I touch the lower vase. So right there I'm tracing, and then I stop. Do not trace on the vase that's in front of it. I'm tracing around the pink paper, and I'll stop again when I get to the vase that is supposed to be in front. Then when I remove the pink paper, it now looks like the larger vase is actually behind the closer vase due to the overlapping. Let's try it again. This time I'll trace the pepper shaker, and then I'm going to put another one in between those two so it can be behind. Make sure you make some of your shapes behind. By placing shapes higher on the page and making them be behind other shapes, we're creating a feeling that our table has some distance and they're not all in a straight line at the bottom of the page. Try to avoid that. I've got overlapping there and there and there. Success! Now I think it's time to make some openings at the tops of our containers. So take each corner and make a little mark that comes in and bring that little curved line underneath until it touches. So now we have an opening called an ellipse, an oval shape at the top of each one of our containers to give it a really three-dimensional look. Try that with each one. Start in the corners and make a little mark. Come in slightly and down slightly with a curve. So we're seeing the opening at the top of our three-dimensional vase. Each one of those openings could be shaded in with your pencil. That helps the illusion of it being three-dimensional and having a shadow inside the vase. It's hard for the light to get down inside those little openings, so they're usually darker inside the openings of the bottles and the vases. I'll even do it to my bowl. This one's a little different because it's going to be a salt and pepper shaker. It's not really a hole. But this one's going to have a little shadow inside. So you can do this entire project using only a pencil. You don't have to color it. But when you do use your pencil, make sure you have dark and light values by creating shadows. Also, it's a good idea to put in a table line, a line where the table ends in the back. Make sure it's not too low. It's got to reach your highest container. and pick up the pencil and draw it behind your bottles and vases and bowls and come out the other side in a straight horizontal line. Feel free to use a ruler if you have one. You have now reached the end of part 1, and you can take a break and come back next week and resume the video right here and start off with part 2, and we'll talk about shading and coloring. Welcome back to part 2, where we will talk about shading our vases, our containers, our bottles, our bowls, whatever you created out of your lateral symmetry paper folds. Notice I'm taking a pencil and I'm coloring in on the left-hand side of my container. I'm just sort of scribbling gently lead all along the left-hand side, and then I'm taking my finger and rubbing very firmly back and forth over that lead. It's blending it together and then smearing it into the white area a little bit to make a lighter value. This makes a softer shadow. So don't just stop after you scribble the pencil, but take your finger and rub it in. You can always wash your finger later or rub it on an eraser. If you happen to get any of that smudging outside the lines, pick up an eraser and just sort of clean your edges a little bit. It looks a little better. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to all of my containers, pressing hard near the edge, pressing a little bit lighter as I work my way in, especially on these large containers. I don't just want a dark shadow near the very edge. I want that gray to work itself into the middle too. You've got to be very careful when you do this part not to get any of that shadow on the vases or containers that are in the foreground. If you look at this picture, you'll see the shadows are always on the left, which means the sunlight or the lights in the room are coming from the right. So that's why they're brightest on the right and darkest on the left. So now we're going to create a shadow underneath each one of our solid containers that's on the table, a cast shadow. This cast shadow is going to go to the left because that is the direction that the light is pointing in. It's casting a shadow away from the light source. So I'm darkening the ground underneath each one of these and dragging that shadow a little bit to the left-hand side of my paper. This takes a little bit of practice to figure out how wide to make the shadow. How long do you want to go with it? How dark do you want your edges? I just want to put a hint of a shadow there. So now I'm going to rub it all in with my finger again to let it smear onto the table as a dark, slight shadow underneath each one. Remember to pause your video whenever you need to, and you do this on your own on your paper, and then just resume the video to keep going. If you would like to do this project only in pencil, then you're almost done. We're just going to draw everything and shade everything and rub it in with our finger, and then it looks successful just the way it is. But if you'd like to stay tuned and see how it looks with some color added to it, I'm going to use colored markers and go on top of my shaded vases. And what's interesting is the markers will actually look darker when they go on top of the lead pencil. So it does create a shadow. It works better with light colors though. If I put any dark colors on top of that pencil, it pretty much covers it over. So you can try this with crayon, colored pencil, or markers if you have any. We're going to move on to the next part. Notice how that orange vase looks like a darker orange on the left and a darker orange in the opening at the top. They should all have that effect. If they don't, maybe you didn't press hard enough with the pencil to start with, and you could add a little more pencil now. Don't you wish we could all color this fast and neatly? Even though it looks like I'm going super fast, I am taking my time and going very slowly and then just speeding up the video. So please don't try to color as fast as I'm coloring, or yours will turn out rather messy, as would mine. I think my finishing touch is going to be to add a little silver color to the top of my salt and pepper shaker. And that way I can darken the little dots inside and make it look more like what it's supposed to be. Here's a photo of my finished piece. Let's see a picture of yours now. Send it to me on Teams.